This is the Raiders theme from Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. But this melody is much more important than just to be the theme for the Raiders March. The melody is actually anchored to the character of Indiana Jones himself, and it recurs throughout the movie whenever you see Indy on screen. This idea of marrying a character to a melody is called a leitmotif, and it's one of the first things that I listen for when I go see a new movie in the theater. So let's go back to June of 1981, and let's see if we can identify the leitmotif for these four characters. Let's look at these melodies one by one, but make sure you stick around to the end because we're going to see if we can find them in the soundtrack itself. The main theme for Indiana Jones is in C major. This melody is based off a rhythmic motif that goes bump ba dum bum. We repeat that rhythmic motif several times, putting different notes over top of it, but it's that rhythmic motif that's shared across all the different phrases of this melody that really tie the whole thing together. The first phrase of this melody contains a triumphant leap of a perfect fourth. A leap of a perfect fourth is not quite as bold as that of a perfect fifth, which Williams has used for many other heroes, like this one in Star Wars. Or here in Superman. I feel like this leap of a perfect fourth is John Williams' way of showing us that Indiana Jones is going to be the hero of the story. You know, I have to wonder, how much of a hero is Indiana Jones actually in this movie? I mean, follow me here. If Indiana Jones was not in the movie at all, the Nazis would have still found the Ark, they still would have opened it, and they all would have died. I mean, it's the same ending. Anyway, let's not go down that road. So as we continue through this Raiders March, we encounter a second melody, which I still think is part of Indy's character. It's got the same rhythmic motif as the first melody, and it's got its own harmonic side slip. Instead of going to D flat, it just goes to A flat. We've talked before about how a melodic phrase can either be a question or it can be a statement. It's all in the way that you inflect the line. Usually if it ends going upward, it's a question, and if it ends coming downward, it's a statement. And these two different melodies for Indiana Jones illustrate that. The first melody ends in a downward motion with a lot of confidence. But the second melody kind of asks its own question, and then it comes back and answers it. When you take these two themes and you orchestrate it into the Raiders March, it kind of starts to tell a story on its own. The first time through, the melody is played boldly by the trumpets with kind of a drum cadence going underneath it. When we come back around for the second time, the melody is doubled now in all of the winds and all of the brass. And then we transition kind of into a bridge where the second melody is played in the strings. Finally, we come back and the melody is played again by all the winds and all the brass, but this time we've added an echo in the low brass and the low strings. This echo in the trombone creates such rhythmic interest that it really drives the energy toward the end of the piece. But actually, before we play that last time through, we hear a new melody, one we haven't heard yet. This is the theme from Marion. Marion is Indy's romantic interest in the film. The melody is in G major, but it kind of meanders around other keys. It's just not quite as stable in G major as, say, Indy was in C major. While the harmony of Indy's theme was pretty simple, it was just basic triads, Marion's theme is much more lush. The harmony underneath this melody makes a pretty liberal use of these half-diminished seventh chords. It's just a more complex, a more sophisticated, frankly a more jazzy way of playing a minor triad. In fact, after John Williams left a short stint at Juilliard, he actually made his career as a traveling jazz piano player, studio musician. And you can really hear the jazz influence in a lot of his soundtracks. I mean, listen to these harmonies in Marion's theme. They're just beautiful. Alright, so that covers our two protagonists, but what about the villains? The main villain in Raiders of the Lost Ark are the Nazis. And as we always do with villains, the melodies are based in minor, and we use tons of diminished harmony underneath them. Notice how the end of this theme has no cadence. The melody is always left in suspension. It's like the characters are gonna die and they're never gonna get a chance to come back home. We've talked about our protagonists, we've talked about our villains, but we still got one more leitmotif to explore, and this one's for the Ark of the Covenant. Generally, we think about leitmotifs as being anchored to a character, but that's not always true. It could also be anchored to an object of great importance to the story. Famously, in another film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that Williams also scored, there's a 5-note melody that anchors, I think, to a UFO. I haven't seen that movie in so long. I don't even remember much about the movie, but I guess this illustrates just how profound these leitmotifs can be, because re, mi, do, do, so, right? Isn't that it? The same idea is true here in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Maybe it's about the pursuit of the Ark more than the object itself, but I'm just going to call this the Ark theme. This theme is wildly unsettling. It's definitely not diatonic, highly chromatic. And it kind of just wanders around aimlessly as if it's looking for resolution, but it never finds it. So let's listen to the final piece of music from the movie. This is the last music you would hear before the credits roll. And let's see if we can identify all 4 of these melodies. Actually, we're not going to hear the Nazi theme because, well, John Williams is such a master. He is definitely in the running, if not for sure, the greatest of all time of the film scoring composers. So don't stop here. I've got another video for you where we explore the leitmotif of Darth Vader and how John Williams made him terrifying.